All right, we're coming on. There's Sarita. Hello, Sarita. I see Heather Lynn, sort of.
Back here.
All right, there's Peter. Hi, Heather Lynn. Good to see you. Well, there we have it. All right, so we just closed exec session, so we'll we have commissioners coming in. Right, we've got Hari coming in for her first meeting. Oh, we've lost Judy. We've gained Yvette. Excellent.
Welcome, everybody. I don't know how many folks are here. Do we have sufficient numbers to begin the meeting?
We do need one more voting member to join us. And actually, I see Commissioner Woods on now, so we do have quorum to begin the meeting. And Commissioners Hager and Sagala are about to log on. They just needed their Zooms resent to them.
All right, great. Well, just because I think it's a good thing to start on time, I would like to call the meeting of the Board of Commissioners of First 5 LA to order and ask Ms. Vo to call the roll.
Thank you, Supervisor. Judy Abdo? Here. Barbara Ferrer? Astrid Hager? Yvette Martinez?
Here.
Frank Ramos? Carol Sagala? Romalis Taylor?
Here.
Keisha Woods? I do see Commissioner Woods. Robert Byrd?
Here.
Carla Pletez Howell? Jacqueline Murkowski?
Here.
Deanne Tilton? I do see Commissioner Tilton as well. And Sheila Keo.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Okay, thank you so much. So Linda, would you read the ground rules for the meeting, please?
Thank you. I would do that. Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. Before we do begin today's meeting, I'm going to be going over some important information. As you're aware, under AB 361, members of the First 5 LA Board of Commissioners and staff may continue to participate in these types of meetings via teleconference during declared emergencies through the end of January 1st, 2024. And in the interest of maintaining appropriate social distancing, members of the public may observe this meeting telephonically or otherwise electronically as posted on our website and this agenda. Now, regarding public comments, there are two ways to submit public comments. And the first way is written public comments via email. They do need to be submitted in advance of the meeting to my email, which is lvo@first5la.org by 1:30 p.m. the day of the meeting in order for them to be read aloud during the meeting. And as a reminder, public comments emailed should indicate the item number the comment corresponds with. And any public comments received after 1:30 p.m. via email will become a part of public records. Now, during the meeting, public members can use the Q&A chat box function to express an interest in speaking to an item. And it is important that these requests to speak are submitted via the Q&A chat box before the item being commented on is presented. And when submitting requests to speak, public members are asked to only provide his or her name and the item number the comment corresponds with. All public comments received during the meeting via the Q&A chat box will be addressed in the order they are received. And when you do hear your name being called by to provide public comments, you'll be given the ability to speak during the meeting. We will call your name twice before moving on to the next public comment. And just a reminder, 2 minutes are allotted for each public comment. And once the 2 minutes are up, we will move on to the next public comment. And finally, before we do begin this meeting, just a couple of other reminders. To minimize background disruptions, all board members and staff should place their lines on mute until called upon to speak. And to minimize multiple people speaking at the same time and to ensure for coherent dialogue, board members are asked to use the hand raise or chat box function to express an interest in speaking. And I would then coordinate with Supervisor Q in the order that your requests are received. And with the exception of adjournment, which will be called for by the chair, a formal roll call will be done for all action items, and a reminder to all board members to take yourselves off of mute prior to roll call. Now, if technical assistance is required during the meeting, please do contact me at 213-276-9389, or you can also send me a chat box function request, and I will connect you with IT. With that, I will now hand this meeting back to our honorable chair.
Thank you very much. Let me call on council next, as there was a closed session meeting prior to this. Council, was there anything to report out of closed session?
Thank you, Chair. No, there was no reportable action from the closed session that was scheduled at 12:15.
All right, thank you very much. So let us move then into our agenda for this public meeting. The next thing on our agenda are those items on consent. Do any commissioners wish to remove any item from consent before we take public comment and vote on the consent items? Hearing nothing and seeing nothing from Ms. Vo, I assume no one wishes to remove anything from consent. Ms. Vo, is there any public comment on our consent items?
There are no public comments on the consent item.
All right, may I have a motion then to approve the items on consent?
So moved. This is Judy.
Thank you, and a second? All right, I'll second. Please call the roll on the consent items.
Judy Abdo,
Yes.
Astrid Hager,
Yes.
Yvette Martinez,
Yes.
Carol Segala, Romala
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Keisha Woods,
Yes.
and Sheila Q.
Yes.
Motion is passed.
Thank you very much. So the next item on our agenda, remarks by the chair, that would be me. So I've been thinking today about the kind of the public hearings that we have from time to time to consider work. It's sort of more generally that's being done by First Five California, and also we have a public hearing today on the annual review of our First Five LA strategic plan. Both of them are mandated by the original legislation, Prop 10. And I think sometimes we sort of just fly by a lot of what's in them. So I think that it might be good to just sort of pause for a minute, look at a few headlines from each of those reports, because it is important, I think, for us to remind ourselves how much really good work First Five California does, and in connection with First Five LA. I think we sometimes forget about the cumulative and collective and positive impact that First Five California and all of its chapters has across the state on our 0 to 5 age children. And certainly since we're the largest, and I might say the fiercest and the mightiest and the coolest of the chapters, First 5 LA generally contributes pretty significant resources, not only funding, but technical assistance, direct services, creative partnering, and reaching so many of our county population. In many ways, I think the work that we do in LA is a bit more challenging than some of the smaller counties, just because we are required to have such a far reach and so many more families to assist. So it's good to look locally, but also through the state. Statewide, in addition to its initial $5 million investment in fiscal year 1920, First 5 California Commission invested an additional $2 million in fiscal year 2021 to continue to support our local mitigation efforts in addressing COVID-19, partnering with systems change agencies to distribute emergency supplies to our families. And across the 58 county commissions statewide, First 5 county commissions served a total of 502,638 children. And that doesn't really count all the families who were touched. And that's almost 20% of California children aged 0 to 5. County commissions statewide reached almost 800,000 parents and caregivers, 75,000 providers, and spent $11.7 million on emergency and disaster relief, including the response to COVID-19. So today, when we look at First 5 LA's annual review, it's a summary of all of the really fine presentations we've gotten as a board during this past fiscal year. A snapshot of priorities for the Center of Family and Child Impact, our policy agenda, our data strategy, our capital improvement project update, our updated procurement policy, which we tend to think, well, you know, why is that important? But it is important how, where, and how much you buy. Living into our DEI values, a training on targeted universalism, our DEI board survey reflections, and of course, our long-term financial planning in the context of our fiscal reality. So just looking at the work that we've done together, I want to really celebrate that. Take a moment to reflect and, understand, of course, so much more needs to be done and will be done. But we are of service, and I think it's very, very important. Speaking of important, before I hand the mic, literally or figuratively, back to Kim, I have a couple of additional important announcements. One is a fond farewell, and the other is a warm welcome. So first, I want to congratulate Commissioner Keisha Woods on her retirement. I want to thank her for her dedicated and insightful service. This is Keisha's last meeting, and we have been so fortunate to have you, Keisha, as Waco's appointee since 2018. So after Kim might want to say something next about Keisha, I want to give all the commissioners an opportunity to share reflections and wish Keisha all the best. Secondly, and I think that Kim will be talking a little bit more about this person, I'd like you to join me in welcoming our new COO, J.R. Nino, who has a lengthy and impressive career as an operations leader and will be joining our senior leadership team. JR has led operations at LA Care, at HealthNet, and at Anthem. So welcome, JR. I think Kim will do a little more talking about you in her remarks. But let me ask if there are any commissioners who have any, farewells or anything to say to Keisha, because now is the time to do that.
Uh, I'm not going to raise my hand, but I'm jumping in.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Taylor. Keisha, you've been a guiding light, a great advocate for children in their early years of education and learning. Totally appreciate your avocation and steadfastness to advocate for the people and children of our community. Just want to wish you every blessing in the world as you go into your retirement. But don't forget, this is home, so you can come by and say hello to us every now and then. Let us know you're still with us. And God bless you and keep you safe, okay?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other commissioners before I call on Kim on this item?
Commissioner Murkowski and then Commissioner Abdo.
Okay, Jackie and then Judy.
Keisha, you have been such an extraordinary partner in so many efforts over the years. First 5LA and lots of other things. I just have the greatest admiration and affection for you in terms of your leadership in the early childhood education world in the county. We're all a lot better off because you've been in your position, but I wouldn't dare to hold you back from retirement. And so also wish you very well, but just wanted to say you've really contributed above and beyond. And there's so many families and children who thank you because of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Judy.
So Keisha, we've known each other for a while.
Yes.
And I learned almost everything I know about Head Start from you. And now that's really important as I serve on the Laco School Board.
Yeah.
But I think your depth of understanding of Head Start has been critical in LA County, but also in the state, in helping us to understand why Head Start works and what doesn't work about Head Start in the state of California. And I really appreciate all the work that you have done to make it clear to everybody just how important Head Start is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Judy. Linda, anybody else wanting to speak before I call on Kim?
Becca Patton from First 5LA.
All right, please go ahead, Becca.
Thank you. Just want to thank Commissioner Woods, Keisha, for your steadfast partnership, your mentorship. I'm just incredibly proud of the work First 5LA and Laco has been able to do together. And
Absolutely.
it was because of your leadership and your partnership, and you had a vision bigger than any of us could have imagined. So just really, really appreciate the time I got to work with you and alongside you.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Anyone
Hager.
else? Go ahead, Astrid.
So Keisha, I know you're probably the shortest of any of the commissioners on the board here, but I would like to thank you for your immediate response to my concerns about the African-American kids in our schools and in early education. And it was very validating and made me feel that, you know, people were actually listening to my concerns. I don't want you to become bored in retirement. So you know how to find me. I can put you to work in a micro millisecond as we try to build preschools and therapeutic daycares for some of these kids that we're really concerned about. A lot of exciting things happening over here. So come talk to me. All right.
All right. I will do.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Astrid. Anyone else?
I don't see any other hands.
Okay. Kim. Don't hear anything.
There we go. Thank you. So Keisha, parting is it is sweet sorrow. When I think about the kind of transformation of First 5LA, it is a reimagining, a transformation that has been done in concert with so many partners. And I, like you, think of what the relationship was between LACO and First 5 LA for the better part of our respective tenures, and reflect on the partnership today, the cohesion, the collaboration, the partnerly orientation, and most importantly, the important systems change work that we are actually doing together, and leveraging your talent, your vision, your strengths, your relationships, your systems with what our team has been able to bring to the table, led by Becca and the early care and education team. And it's just been enormously rewarding. And that is the product of how you lead, how you show up, your leadership norms and practices and behaviors, and really modeling a way of how systems change, hard and complex and difficult as it may be, actually can work when there's an alignment of intention, alignment of vision, alignment of goals. So thank you for being such an amazing commissioner. We are grateful for your volunteering for this assignment. Thank you to Superintendent Eduardo for tapping your smarts and talents for this role, and all that you've brought to so many different conversations and issues we've together wrestled with. And thank you for being such a close partner in so many ways. I know Becca and her team will most acutely miss your presence, but know that presence and impact has been felt by our organization broadly, and for that we're very grateful.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank
So,
you.
Commissioner Woods, any words in retaliation?
Well, this is guys, all bring tears to my eyes, but it is exciting to be able to look forward to a new journey in life, and not all of us get to say that. I have had an amazing journey, and the one part that I always think about in my journey is early education chose me. I didn't choose this. I was working with disabled adults, and ECE chose me, and I will never trade the experience of the last 30 years or so for anything. Working with First 5 LA, I don't see you anymore as a community partner. I see you as part of my family. And we are in sync. We share the same vision. We've done some wonderful things, and I promise each of you, I will not put down my retirement hat totally until I bring equity for our early education providers and as compared to kindergarten teachers. They deserve to be treated and recognized the same as kindergarten teachers. And I will continue that work, just in another role. My job was to grow leaders, and you can't grow leaders if you don't get out the way or allow them to lead. And so that's all I'm doing. I'm moving out the way, embracing the journey I've had to be executive director and to be the leader in this field, to hand it over, to allow Becca's to come up and exercise their wonderful visions and talents. So thank you all. It's been just a joy to work with you. And again, I'm not putting down my hat yet until we get salary parity.
Well, it looks like a long road, but it's a good road. And Keisha, thank you so much. You make a big difference. When I first ran for office, I said to the people doing my campaign, well, could we use some kind of slogan like one person can make a difference? And they said, oh, well, it's kind of trite or whatever. But I've come to realize that it is so true. We don't accomplish anything alone, but they don't accomplish what they're accomplishing without us. It's been a real lesson, and your contribution in these areas has been enormous and fun, and so good to know you. Since I'm going to be retiring the end of November, maybe we'll, I don't know, catch a cup of coffee somewhere. So thank you so much for your service on this board, and for everything you've done at LACO and everything you've done all along in a great career. So Ms. Vo, do we have any public comment on the remarks of the chair?
There are no public comments on the remarks of the chair.
That's good. We always like that. So let me turn it over to our executive director for her comments, and I think we're also going to hear a little more about JR.
Yeah,
Over to you, Kim.
terrific. Thank you. And I'll ask JR in a moment just to say a few words of introduction. But JR joined us about 3 weeks ago. So we joke about, we have people on the leadership team who've been with the organization nearly 20 years. And we have JR who can hold up on 2 or maybe 3 hands the number of days. But we are delighted to have JR in this important leadership role as our Chief Operating Officer who leads our Center of Operational Excellence. And that includes our contracting work, our finance work, our IT work, and our facilities work. JR, as Sheila noted in her introduction, comes by way of very extensive, deep experience in healthcare, working most recently with one of our great partners, LA Care. LA Care has nabbed a number of first 5 LAers over the years. So we are delighted to tap into John Bacchus, the CEO's trove of talent, and have the talent flow come in our direction. We are really fortunate to have someone of JR's background who can really bring a keen understanding of how policies, practices, systems, people, and technology all come into play to help support organizations to be as effective and efficient as possible. So you'll have an opportunity to hear from and get to know JR over the course of his tenure. But for now, let me invite him just to say a few words of introduction, if you're so inclined, JR.
Yeah, thank
Yes,
you, Kim. Thank you, Kim. Appreciate it. First of all, Commissioner Woods, best of luck on your endeavors. I just only regret that I couldn't work with you at some level coming over here, and hopefully me coming here wasn't a reason for you to leave on that note. Secondly, I wanted to thank Kim and the rest of the leadership team, as well as all the commissioners that are on the call, in terms of giving me this opportunity. I think First 5 LA has done a lot of good stuff over the years. I plan to build upon those successes and then some on there. I do have personal experience as I've gone through my introductions through all the First 5 LA staff of having child going through 0 to 5 years of age experiences and some difficulties. So I do have a personal motivation to be here. I also have my professional motivation to be here to make things better for First 5 LA. So again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to First 5 LA staff for welcoming me so far. It's been a pleasure. Everybody's been very welcoming. So I really appreciate that, and definitely looking forward to working with everyone.
Thank you so much, JR. Kim, do you have anything else in your report for the board?
I think I'm going to pass given time. So I think I'm good, Sheila. Thank you.
I think you're good too. So that's good. That's 2 of us, and probably a lot more on the call. All right. Linda, are there any public comments on Kim's report?
There are no public comments on Kim's report, so we are good to move on to the next item.
All right, great. So we're now on item 5, which is to approve, and this is a real approval with a vote, the 22-23 budget and long-term financial plan. I believe Daisy is going to present. We want to present our condolences to Raul, whose father passed away a short time ago. And so I think I'll just turn it over to Daisy. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just share my screen so that we're all seeing the same presentation. All right. Just want to confirm, can everybody see that? Yes? No?
No. Nope, not yet, Daisy.
Oh, interesting. Okay, let's try that once more. Okay.
There we
Can
go.
you see that?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep, now you're on.
Wonderful, thank you. You'd think after 2 years, we would have gotten this sorted, figured it out. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, commissioners, staff, and guests. We are very excited to present the fiscal year 22-23 budget and updates to the LTFP for the third and final time, as we are seeking board approval of these items today, as Kim noted. We first brought the draft 22-23 budget and updated LTFP before board members for review and discussion at the May 4th Joint Budget and Finance Committee and Executive Committee meeting, and again at last month's meeting of the Board of Commissioners. The estimates in both the budget and the LTFP have not changed from those we shared with you previously. And before we ask for your approval of these items, we would like to remind you of the figures you will be asked to take action on. But before I continue, I would like to say that on behalf of both myself and Raul, who, as you know, was unfortunately unable to join us today, we would like to extend our deep appreciation to all staff and commissioners for your participation in this process. The development of this budget was a deeply collaborative process that required a lot of discussion, strategic thinking, and planning to ensure that the proposed work and resources align to our strategic plan priorities, values, and fiscal reality. And we would also like to acknowledge and thank the finance team, who have been remarkably supportive and obliging throughout this entire process. As I mentioned, the purpose of today's presentation is to request formal approval of the 22-23 budget and updates to the LTFP through the adoption of resolution number 2201, which includes a number of actions. So first, we are requesting to replace last year's resolution. Second, we are requesting approval of the fiscal year 22-23 budget items, including the proposed budget and administrative limit. Third, consistent with previous years, we are requesting approval and endorsement of the GASB 54 fund balance commitments of just under 70 million. So this information can be found in the 22-23 draft budget, attachment F, included in today's board book. As a reminder, committed funds are those funds that have been directed by the Commission via resolution for a specific purpose, including multi-year allocations and the approved fiscal year budget. You will receive more information pertaining to our fund balances through the audit process in September. Fourth, we also identified approximately 22.8 million in estimated remaining balance for an allocation, an initiative that's ending in fiscal year 21-22. Because formal approval via resolution is required to lift and remove the constraints from these previously allocated and committed resources, we are requesting that the Commission release these funds, which will be shifted back into our assigned fund balance for use to advance the strategic plan. We are also asking for approval of the fund balance reserve for fiscal year 22-23, calculated at 50% of the total budget, or just under 53 million for fiscal year 22-23. And lastly, we are requesting approval of updates to the long-term financial plan, which formally assigns funds through fiscal year 27-28. Just to be clear on the request and expectations, this request for approval of the updates to the LTFP is separate from the conversation around the future state of the plan and greater alignment to our fiscal realities, which was shared last month. That discussion will resume in the fall. Materials pertaining to these requests are included in today's board book. So as a reminder, the total proposed fiscal year 22-23 budget of just under 106 million reflected in this table is consistent with the estimates presented at the previous points of board engagement last month. The proposed cost estimates result in a more strategic and prudent budget as we continue to not only do more with less, but we align our program costs to the LTFP established spending limits and the fiscal reality of declining revenues. As mentioned during the previous board engagement touch points, the fiscal year 22-23 administrative cost limit is calculated at 14.1 million and represents approximately 13.3% of the total proposed budget. Turning to the long-term financial plan, one area that we would again like to briefly highlight and remind everyone of is that our long-term financial projections continue to reflect declining revenues, spending that exceeds revenue, and a declining fund balance. And this is as excess of spending is offset by fund balance resources. So we will continue to explore and try to identify new sources of funding and partnership that could help support and advance our strategic goals. As always, we will continue to monitor the revenues and expenditures, as well as the long-term impact to our fund balance. And again, additional discussions regarding the LTFP's future state and alignment to our fiscal reality will resume in the fall. No action on that item is being taken today. So listed here are a few of the key assumptions and adjustments that we previously shared were used in the development of the long-term financial plan and its updates, including spending estimates that were revised to align with actual spending, the mid-year revised budget, and the proposed budget, as well as revenue estimates that were revised to align with the updated projections from the state. The result of the updates to revenues and estimated spending included in the LTFP is an overall increase in revenue, decrease in expenditures, and consequently, an increase in our projected available ending fund balance at fiscal year end 2028. So we will continue to see fluctuations in the total fund balance over the course of the long-term plan. This is completely normal as we align to final audited annual expenditures, revised budgets, and revised revenue projections from the state. So as our revenues and projected spending has been revised to align with the latest information, we do require board approval of the revised long-term plan. So again, today marks the final step in our budget journey, and we are requesting board approval of resolution number 2022-01. I now turn it over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daisy. Do I have any questions or comments from commissioners?
Commissioner Taylor?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Romualdez.
just one clarification on the long-term financial plan. If we approve this now, we know that this is still a discussion as to what we're going to do going forward. And this is only an interim move to approve it as we know it now, but it's subject to revision, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, then no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other commissioners wish to comment or ask a question? Kim, do you want to add anything to this presentation before we look to adopt the resolution?
No, I think we have tread this ground through other presentations. I think Daisy did a nice high-level overview of what we're asking the board to approve.
So I know we're asked to approve the resolution. Is that the only action, or do we need a separate action on the long-term financial plan?
No, Chair, I believe staff's only recommendation is to adopt the resolution, and that would include an action on the plan.
All right, good. Then do I have a motion to adopt the proposed resolution?
I'll move it, Dr. Hager.
Thank you, Astrid. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Thank you, Wallace. Please call the roll on this motion on item number 5.
Judy Abdo?
Oh, wait, stop. Was there any public comment? I forgot to ask. I'm sorry about stopping in the middle here.
There are no public comments on this item.
All right, good. Sorry, just had that thought. Please go ahead with the roll call on the motion.
Judy Abdo?
Yes.
Astrid Hager?
Yes.
Yvette Martinez?
Yes.
Carol Segala?
Yes.
Romualdez Taylor?
Yes.
Keisha Woods?
Yes.
And Sheila Q.
Yes.
Motion is passed.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to take a 10-minute break to allow our court reporter and everybody else to do whatever they need to do for 10 minutes. So we'll return at 2:17. So we'll start our break now. Thank you. Okay, let us reconvene. Hope everybody had a nice break. And the next item on our agenda is item 7, which is a public hearing on First 5 California's annual report required by Prop 10. And in addition, we're always very interested to hear. So we will turn to a new colleague, somewhat new colleague of ours, Hari Kim Han, a data strategy specialist who recently joined us, who is going to present for the first time. And I was going to make up all kinds of stories about how we harass our first-time presenters, but that would not be true. So instead, just like to welcome you, if you're prepared, to tell us about First 5 California's annual report. Over to you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Here we go. And I feel very welcomed here, so thank you so much. Good afternoon, commissioner, staff. Wait, sorry, before I start, can people see my screen? Okay, good. All right. So good afternoon, commissioner, staff, and members of the public. I am Hari Kim Han, and I'll be presenting the first of 2 public hearings today. This first public hearing allows us to close out our annual reporting process for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 and reflect on statewide highlights from the fiscal year that has already been completed. After this, we'll transition our focus to the current fiscal year, and my colleague Kaya will then update us on the implementation of the strategic plan during fiscal year 2021 to 2022. The annual report data for the current fiscal year will be shared during the September and October board meeting. So we'll be providing a background on the First 5 California annual report and then provide highlights from fiscal year 2020 to 2021. So one of the conditions of receiving Prop 10 tobacco tax funds is holding a public hearing at least once a year to review and file First 5 California's annual report. To generate this report, each county commission was required to submit annual report data to First 5 California. Commissioners approved First 5 LA's submission of the annual report data at the October 2021 Board of Commissioners meeting. First 5 California then distills the information into the annual report, which summarizes the collective efforts of the 58 county commissions statewide and First 5 California as an entity. So we will share some key highlights from the First 5 California's 2020 to 2021 annual report, which is included in your board materials packet. So Chair Keel did a fantastic job on sharing some of the key highlights from the annual report earlier in her opening remarks. So I'm going to just provide a high-level highlight on this slide. In fiscal year 2021, First 5 California Commission and 58 county commissions statewide continue to provide supports for COVID-19 relief. In addition, county commissions statewide continue to reach children prenatal through 5 and their families across California in order to promote, support, and optimize early childhood development. The remaining data we will share with you today will focus on highlights from the 58 county commissions. First 5 California requires that investments made by county commissions be categorized into 4 result areas. 3 of the result areas focus on direct service, which are improved child health, improved family functioning, and improved child development. The last result area is improved systems of care, which focuses on systems change efforts. Before sharing highlights for each result area, I then want to know some limitations for this approach. First, it is important to note that First 5 California result areas do not align with the strategies outlined in our current strategic plan. In addition, the systems of care result areas include all the expenditures that are not direct service work. Since First 5 California collects limited data for the systems of care result, we cannot provide a more detailed information on our systems change work. These limit First 5 LA's ability to generate meaningful local insights using the annual report data. In fiscal year 2020 to 2021, there was a total of over $385 million in expenditures across the 4 result areas for all 58 county commissions statewide. First 5 LA accounts for 23% of these expenditures. The annual report provides highlights for each result area. The largest expenditure area for county commissions statewide was for the improved child health, which includes investments like Welcome Baby and home visiting program. County commissions expended $112 million, with almost a third of this amount could be attributed to First 5 LA. For improved systems of care, almost $103 million was spent on non-direct service efforts like advocacy and initiatives for systems-wide structural supports. Investments such as First 5 LA's Best Start Regional Network grantees, policy advocacy funds, and Help Me Grow LA fall in this category. $44 million or 43% of this result area could be attributed to First 5 LA. For the result area of improved family functioning, over $93 million was spent on short-term or intensive family supports and literacy programs such as the Little by Little program. 3% of this amount could be attributed to First 5 LA. For improved child development, over $77 million was spent on services and supports that improve early learning programs. First 5 LA's Quality Start Los Angeles is an example that fits in this category, and 9% of the amount for this result area could be attributed to First 5 LA. This graph depicts how the expenditures are split across the First 5 California result areas. The green bars represent expenditures of First 5 LA, and the blue represents expenditures of all 58 county commissions statewide. Almost 50% of First 5 LA's expenditures focused on systems of care investments, which is consistent with our strategic direction as a systems change agent. This was a greater proportion compared to 27% of expenditures statewide. Instead, county commissions statewide expended a greater proportion of the funds on direct service to improve family functioning and child development. Out of the 3 direct service result areas, First 5 LA expended the most funding to improve child health with investments such as the Welcome Baby program. This is in line with the spending of county commissions statewide for this result area. This concludes the annual report process for fiscal year 2021. As a result of the limitations shared early in the presentation, we were not able to generate a local data brief for fiscal year 2021. We are exploring additional ways to collect and examine local data through the lens of First 5 LA's strategic plan and systems change approaches, and will return in the fall with the fiscal year 21-22 annual report data. Finally, as we know, First 5 California is moving into more systems work with the network of First 5s. We are working to help re-envision the approach to annual reporting to better reflect the systems change work of county commissions statewide and tell that larger story of First 5s collectively. So with that, I'll hand it over to Chair Keel for public comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let us start with any commissioner questions or comments on the presentation, if there are any at all. Any questions to Hari?
I currently don't see any commissioner hands up.
Okay, well, I did want to say that it's interesting that though we hear a lot about declining revenue, there was a quote actually in the report that I found interesting and really uplifting, saying, despite declining tobacco tax revenues, county commissions across the state, in coordination with the First 5 Association, continue to advance their work in creating and implementing integrated early childhood systems, building effective community partnerships, and pursuing deeper and more widespread impacts through policy and systems change. Although county commissions are focused on local needs and opportunities, and First 5 California addresses issues at a statewide level, progress continued to be made during 2021 to align state and local policy priorities and share learning. And I think that although, as we found, some of the original approaches and foci of even the initiative, have been expanded across a number of counties and especially in ours. I think that it's important to see the progress that's being made, and especially what would have been missing if it weren't for Prop 10 and it weren't for First Five and this funding allocated across all 58 counties. So thank you very much for the report. Linda, is there any public comment on this item?
There are no public comments on this item.
All right, this item was for information, so we don't need to take any vote on it. Let us move then, as Hari indicated, Kaya Teeth is going to report to us on the annual review of our own First Five LA strategic plan. So Kaya, if I could turn it over to you, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And good afternoon, everyone, to commissioners, staff, and members of the public. So as shared today, we will share a brief update on year 2 implementation of our 2020-2028 strategic plan. So as you heard right now, previously from my colleague Hari on the annual public hearing of the First Five annual report for fiscal year 2021, this update serves as our annual public hearing on First Five LA strategic plan for fiscal year 21-22, consistent with Propositions 10's procedure requirements as Hari outlined. And as the board chair has mentioned, this is also an opportunity for us to pause and share some reflections and learnings from year 2 implementation, and as well as preview the year ahead related to our first cycle of strategic plan review and refinement. We'll close the presentation with some Q&A. Would love to hear some reflections from the board as well on year 2 implementation, as well as receive any additional comments as part of the public hearing of our strategic plan. So firstly, we would like to ground today's presentation with how our strategic plan serves as our roadmap to our very bold North Star. So we want every single child in Los Angeles County to have what they need to thrive, and that they show up on the first day of kindergarten happy, healthy, curious, loved, nurtured, and in a community that has resources and opportunities. Then what are the outcomes that are most important for us to relentlessly pursue? And what would it take to achieve those outcomes? Our strategic plan serves as that guide that articulates First Five LA's priorities to address systemic inequities, as well as uplifting the important consideration of how First Five LA does its work. As a reminder, First Five LA's work, implementation work, is organized by these 4 strategic priorities. The work in Strategic Priority 1 is focused on strengthening public and community systems of early prevention, intervention, and learning so that they work better for young children and their families. In order to strengthen public and community systems, our second strategic priority is focusing on leveraging the experiences within our 14 Best Start geographies to catalyze, strengthen, and elevate empowering and innovative approaches generated by communities to improve the lives of young children and their families. Our strategic priority 3 is grounded in the understanding that our systems change efforts, and what we're learning is informed by community voice and data where families' perspectives, stories of families' experiences, along with quantitative measures, are all essential tools to build public will and affect change. And to successfully contribute to the outcomes we seek for young children and families, Strategic Priority 4 really is focused on strengthening our internal operational effectiveness around structure, staffing, processes, culture, and sustainability to more tightly align with our strategic direction and intended impact. So as the board chair has mentioned, throughout this fiscal year, the First Five LA team has engaged the board in sharing year 2 implementation progress of our strategic plan across these 4 strategic priorities. The next 2 slides will provide a very brief highlight of implementation progress across these 4 strategic priorities. They are meant to be a very high-level snapshot of implementation updates that the board have heard over this past fiscal year, and does not represent a comprehensive overview of year 2 implementation progress. As a resource, we provided an attachment in today's board materials of a list of the past board presentations on strategic plan implementation and where these examples are pulled from. So with that, we'll move forward with sharing some implementation highlights of strategic priorities 1 and 2. Firstly, the board has heard how we're partnering with county agency system leaders to strengthen and sustain prevention-oriented systems that serve and support children and families, how we're centering DEI in our programmatic work, and advancing sustainability of early childhood development priorities. Oops. Some examples that were shared in our past presentation includes our partnership with LA Care for Help Me Grow LA implementation and the use of disaggregated race data to prioritize the selection of clinic participation, the coordination and integration with county partners and systems around the development of more diverse referral pathways and entryways to home visiting, as well as the current work of establishing bi-directional referrals between home visiting and Help Me Grow. And another example is helping LA County implement the federal Family First Prevention Service Acts, where it's not only a sustainability strategy, but it's an opportunity to make connections between home visiting and the goals of the child welfare system oriented towards prevention. The board has also heard about how we're aligning community, First 5 LA, and system partner priorities identified across the 5 Best Start regions. Examples that were shared in past presentation include strengthening the networks between organizations and people to influence systems in ways that reduce barriers to services and resources. Another example is connecting community priorities to broader countywide initiatives, such as integrating Best Start voices into child welfare transformative initiatives. And lastly, another example is working closely with our partners and communities as we begin to build out the provider advisory group for our home-based childcare strategy. For our strategic priorities 3 and 4 implementation highlights, the board has heard about how we're exploring ways to utilize data to tell First 5 LA's story of progress in achieving the outcomes we're committed to. As you heard from Hadi, the Office of Data for Actions work includes developing a data strategy that provides a vision and roadmap for using data to achieve our systems change goal. We're looking at how we could re-envision our approach to annual reporting to better reflect First 5 LA systems change work, as well as exploring those additional ways to collect and examine local data so we have a better understanding of the local context to inform our strategies and priorities. Lastly, the board has heard over this past fiscal year how we're enhancing, aligning, and integrating our internal processes, practices, policies to successfully execute our strategic plan, and how we're really taking steps to live fully into our diversity, equity, and inclusion values and investment guidelines. Examples of the work that's been highlighted has been updating First 5 LA's procurement policy so that we're better aligning First 5 LA's strategic direction and operations, reviewing data and best practices, and to inform the development of recommendation that advances DEI in our organizational culture, internal practices, and external work. And another example is how we're exploring different strategies for aligning our revenues and expenditures and maximizing use of the fund balance after the board approved 50% reserve. So those, again, that was meant to be a snapshot of our implementation highlights. And so based on that, what are we learning about how we're prioritizing and focusing, aligning and integrating and centering DEI in our work? Firstly, we're learning that prioritizing what we will as well as what we won't do requires building that strategic muscle grounded in a practice of inquiry where we're asking ourselves, where do we want to go and why? How do we get there? Where are we now? So developing this practice of inquiry is required both for the what of our work, which is our strategies, as well as the how of how our work how we do our work that contributes to organizational culture. This is a continuous and iterative process that we need to do both informally as well as formally, such as through our strategic plan review and refinement cycles that occurs every 3 years of implementation. Secondly, we're learning that there are various interpretations of our strategic plan and priorities, how we define and measure success, how we assess progress, and how we can best integrate our work to achieve common organization-wide goals. We've heard that our strategic plan has a lot of layers, and it's difficult for lay readers to understand. So we're taking these learnings seriously, and we'll endeavor to address this through the first cycle of our strategic plan review and refinement, which you'll hear more in next steps. We're also learning that if we want to prioritize and focus, align and integrate and center DEI in our work, clarifying the outcomes we will pursue requires time and intentionality. So that way we have shared commitment and understanding of these outcomes. Fourth, we are learning that aligning our strategic activities to our financial realities is a critical piece of our efforts to focus and prioritize and maximize our contribution to the change for young children and families. We are doing this by bringing a multi-year orientation to our financial planning and exploring strategies that will strengthen First 5LA's financial standing over the longer term to align with and sustain the impact we seek for young children and families. Lastly, we know that our internal policies, practices, norms, and behaviors influences our external work. That is why our commitment to centering DEI in our work has required our own self-reflection at an individual, team, and organizational level. The employee-led process of developing recommendation to embed DEI more explicitly into our internal as well as external work has taught us that this is hard but important work. It requires building and at times restoring trust, creating intentional brave spaces so we could have these hard conversations, and developing the accountability structures needed to hold us accountable for our commitment to DEI. So those were just a few reflections and learnings from this past fiscal year, and we look forward to hearing from the board on your reflections over this past year of strategic plan implementation. Before we open that up, I just wanted to preview what's ahead for this upcoming fiscal year 22-23. This timeline you see before you represents our current best thinking to date and will continue to evolve as we move into implementing these activities. So as we mentioned, building on the first 2 years of strategic plan implementation and what we're learning from our experience, data, and external context, we're planning that first cycle of strategic plan review and refinements that will take place over the summer through Q3 of next fiscal year. That strategic plan review and refinement efforts is an opportunity for us to provide further clarity on the why, what, and how of our work. So that way we have deeper alignment of what we're saying yes to, and equally important, what we're saying no to. These efforts include opportunities to refine elements of our strategic plan, the impact framework, which is our tool of how we will measure progress on our outcomes, and the continued work on aligning our long-term financial plan to our fiscal reality. Starting in July through the fall, we will come back to the board with more information about these refinement efforts, our progress to date, and seek board input and guidance where appropriate. Our strategic plan review and refinement cycle will close by Q3 with a transition to our annual work planning and resource forecasting efforts where we're updating our work plans and developing budget for fiscal year 23-24 grounded in these refinements. Secondly, throughout the next fiscal year, you see that on the timeline, we will continue to make progress in embedding DEI in our work internally and externally. Specifically, this work will focus on implementation planning for the DEI recommendations that will be finalized this summer, as well as the development of the DEI assessment report by our consultant partner, SEED. Another focus of the next fiscal year is to move the annual public hearing of the strategic plan to the fall of each fiscal year So it aligns with First Five California's annual report data and our annual audit. You see that reflected in Q2, where we will provide the annual public hearing for strategic plan, the financial audits, and fiscal year 21-22 annual report data consistent with these three procedural requirements. This move supports our efforts to integrate these three public hearings so that we provide a more comprehensive review of progress on our strategic plan, as well as giving us space and opportunity to reflect on our learnings. So with that, that concludes our brief update of strategic plan implementation for year 2. And we'll love to hand it back over to our board chair to take the board's question, as well as any of your reflections and learning from this past fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaya. That was excellent. And I wanted to kind of comment a little bit ahead of time and then take some board comments. When Prop 10 was passed, there was sort of a notion about what should happen in the future so that people would know in the public, where is this money going? What is it being used for? And as we've seen, there's a statewide presentation, and then one from each one of the county commissions. And this one, I think, the fact that we, as you indicated, reflect on even the title of what we call this, a strategic plan. Because as you indicated, strategy is what we do, and plan in its own way is how we get there. And so we have focused on figuring out where are we going and how do we get there by developing these, the 4 strategic priorities and expanding them. And I think that the work that we've done, especially in looking at our DEI value identification and trying to live into that, asking the board about how that might be accomplished. Looking as we must at long-term financial planning. And I think that our strategic plan over this year has evolved so that we can really move forward. And I think that it reflects in terms of the things that we've been able to carry out, not only what we've done, but as you indicated, what we've learned. And I think that our emphasis on data collection and having a strategy about what we collect and how we analyze it is also extremely important. So thank you very much for the report. Any commissioners wish to give some feedback about their thoughts on how this strategic plan has moved along in this past year?
Commissioner Taylor?
Yeah, there's some things that I think we're not taking an opportunity to elevate. One of them is the outcomes of our efforts, especially in the leveraging of collaboration and partnership to make a change in the children's lives, and specifically some good work that the staff and everyone is doing relevant to a smooth handoff of the Help Me Grow effort as it relates to home visitation and the cross pathways. That's a story that we need to be telling, because that is a big hole when it comes to regional center services for these children that don't happen. And then being open and through this dialogue, we actually communicate. They can send families in for resources to home visitation that makes sense. So this story needs to be elevated as a part of our strategy to show that we've learned and elevated this concept and got rid of the, what I call the institutional isolation of services. So it's more friendly for the parent who has hell trying to navigate these various systems to get their children help, right? And so I think we need to be telling that story, and we need to be elevating it as a part of our strategic plan as an example, just one example. So anyone seeing this doesn't get lost in the nebulous discussion of what this is and that is. A real concrete thinking. Another example is the sustainability effort. I heard everything but sustainability here. That was one of our primary goals as a part of this year, is to talk about sustainability. You guys have done a lot of good work in sustainability. We need to elevate our effort to create sustainability of these efforts and programs, whether we do it or someone else does it. It's to sustain the change that we are putting forward. Some examples of it, and now we got DPSS doing home visitation. That didn't happen without this strategic plan. We have other people doing home visitation that weren't doing it before. So it's that kind of stuff that we need to be elevating more in the outcomes of our efforts. And not everything is, and the data, I've been waiting for the data to come forward. We've been pushing for a whole year about getting this data up so we can prove our outcomes, prove what it is, and storytell. I think at some point during this year or into next year, we need to see those stories so that when someone says, you put all this money into this, what is the outcome? And I know we have outcomes, I just mentioned a few. There's a bunch of them that you guys have done that we're not talking about. And we need to elevate that, because this gets to be nebulous to the citizenship or stakeholders outside, because they don't understand all of this planning and strategy, but they do understand outcomes. They do understand networking. They do understand getting rid of barriers and closing the gap of service. So I'm just kind of saying what I'm missing in this is that kind of information so that anyone outside of us will know all the great work that is going on that is not being elevated. Just a thought and a suggestion.
Very good. I think all that you mentioned, very important and good feedback. Any other commissioners wanting to give some feedback to Kaya and the staff on this?
I don't see any other commissioner hands up.
Okay. Kim, did you want to make any comment at all on this? I wasn't certain, and it's not in my notes, but always like to give you a chance.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Taylor's comments, and I think what you're lifting up, Commissioner Taylor, is just an example of our effort to evolve what this annual reporting process is and what it isn't. And the intention today was not to provide kind of a definitive recitation of accomplishments so much as to provide an update and some high-level bullets on where we are investing a lot of resources and efforts in making progress. Kaya touched on work that we have underway related to reviewing and refining the strategic plan that we'll be coming back to the board on in July, and then further in the fall. A part of that is to further refine our impact framework. So you and other commissioners have given voice to the importance of us bringing greater clarity to both developing a data strategy that represents, what is the data most important and why, and how will we use it and to what end. What we have learned, and we will talk with the board further about in July and in the fall, Kaya touched on, which is as powerful as our North Star is, and as important as our child and family results may be, they represent very, very broad statements of success. And one of the insights that we want to come back and talk with the board more deeply about in July is related to, as a part of this reviewing and refining of the existing strategic plan, is to bring more clarity and precision to those goals we are going to relentlessly pursue, was the term Kaya used. And we want to get to that point of clarity, because absent that clarity, our strategic plan doesn't provide much guidance in terms of not just what we do, but what we don't do, because it is so broad. That aspiration of our North Star is so great. So these are some big, hard issues we're wrestling with. And until we have greater clarity and definition about what are we going to hold ourselves accountable for and relentlessly pursue, we want the data strategy and our outcomes reporting and our impact framework to be aligned with those more tightly and clarified outcomes. So it's a long way to say you're lifting up some really important issues for us. We hear you. And I'm just giving you a little bit of a preview and complementing what Kaya shared about some of the work we have underway that we'll be bringing to the board and have a much deeper discussion at the July meeting and then in the fall. Sheila, I see Carol's hand up, so let me turn the mic to her.
Kim, I just
Okay.
wanted to, I'm very relieved to hear that we're looking at some data-driven information. I think it's incredibly important in terms of future planning, as well as really evaluating our success. So thank you, Commissioner Taylor, for bringing it up. And thank you, Kim, for giving us the information and a good way of looking forward to, again, our future plans, as well as what we have already taken care of. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you both. One of the things I was thinking of when you were speaking, and as well as when Kaya was presenting and Ramalis reacting, is one of the things that I have not heard in, not just at First Five, but kind of other places, really relates to the dynamic nature of the world around our population of interest. I was thinking particularly about how everything changed during the pandemic in terms of how young people were getting information, how they were allowed to go to school or preschool, and how not only did they not all have the skills they needed, they didn't have the technology they needed, and they didn't have the access that they needed. And I remember a professor I had a long time ago in college said that we spend a lot of time studying the actions and needs of fish in an ocean, but we don't spend as much time analyzing what's changing in the water and how it impacts the fish. Now, that is no longer true since climate change, because we do understand a lot of changes in the water and a lot of fish that had to move, further north because everything was getting warmer. But in our context, I don't know if we have a senior strategist on the future. I just finished reading, last year, a book by Kim Stanley Robinson that was about creating a new department in the United Nations related to the future and being ready for it in a way that they never were, and even impacting it in an intentional and meaningful way. So I'm thinking in terms of our own strategic plan, not necessarily, next month or the month after, but we may want to also think about the water and how we need to adjust as we see the larger world changing for our young charges. So it just something that came to mind while you guys were speaking.
Yeah,
I thank you.
Yeah, I think,
Go ahead.
Sheila, I think it's a really important point, and it's something we will return to for more dialogue with the board in July and in the fall. We are asking ourselves some questions, as I said, and Kaya touched on, about our North Star and how we are using it. It's a powerful, bold statement. It is oriented very much towards school readiness. And we're asking ourselves some questions about, are we missing something in terms of what it takes for children to thrive and to develop optimally? And that's a slightly different take on our work. And we're asking ourselves some questions that we would like to invite you into as well, in terms of when we think about the experience of children prenatally and in those earliest months and years, It's like, so what does a child's optimal development look like by age 5? And what's preventing children from reaching their optimal development? So those are questions we've been asking ourselves and our teams. And those are questions we hear from parents about in our work in the Best Start across the 5 Best Start communities and regions. And a lot of the learning is about the water, to use your analogy, Sheila. It's about income security. It's about poverty. It's about racism. It's about food and housing stability. And so it lifts some important questions up for us in terms of how we think about where we are putting a stake in the ground. It's going to need to be tighter than all children enter kindergarten ready to succeed. And that's the conversation we are having around child development and what it takes and what is hindering optimal child development, that we would like to, begin to engage the board on more fully in July and in the fall. And, from that, which is about our reviewing and refining our strategic plan, the greater clarity about the outcomes we're going to relentlessly pursue, that needs to drive our data strategy. There's, the ocean could be full of data, but we want the data to be data that's relevant to our work and our outcomes, and for us to be clear about how we intend to and will use it. So I hope Kaya and Antoinette aren't getting too anxious of me getting ahead of them and the team in terms of July, but I just think and Kaya really did a nice job kind of lifting up some of these issues that we're wrestling with that we want to talk about a little bit further. And maybe, Sheila, if you could bear with me, I'd ask Antoinette if there's any final comment you want to make, given this conversation.
Thank you, Kim. And yes, I mean, we are asking ourselves some really important questions, because the world that surround us, that surround children, that surrounds our work, is changing. It is very dynamic, as you pointed out, Commissioner Kuehl. So I just want to reaffirm that. And also, one of the things that Kaya talked about was us shifting from doing a annual public hearing in June to doing it in the fall, aligned with the annual report as well as the audit. Because what we realized is that the board is getting information about a fiscal year in different ways, and it's not in a very integrated, comprehensive way. So what we want to do when we come back in the fall, we will be reporting back how we, what we were working on, how we spent the money, what data we're submitting to the state, but also what have we accomplished and what have we learned, so that it's a comprehensive review of the prior fiscal year. So that's just the point that I want to underscore, that we recognize that it can be a little confusing, like which fiscal year are we talking about here and what are we doing? And so we're working to integrate these various processes, and definitely appreciate the comments about really being clear and making the results of our work more visible. So definitely appreciate that, and something that we're working on.
I just have a statement. I like that comment that Supervisor Crew put in there, and Kim is talking about, but the water that is getting real messed up is COVID and what it's doing to these children. Just recently, an article came out about how our children are having developmental delays as it relates to the impact of COVID. And we can't lose that. And we gotta speak up for that with these children at the state, federal level, to get the resources that these families need to help their children get caught up. And that needs to be put on the table so it just doesn't get lost in the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting to me when we talk about readiness, there are issues really kind of beyond our reach. I mean, I don't know how you prepare a child with a different gender identity or gender expression for what they're going to face when they get to school. I mean, we're not changing homophobia in society, but maybe recognizing when we talk about DEI and all the different ways that children are going to face issues that make it more difficult for them to learn, that we simply think about resiliency, because I know many of us would remember from our lives, because we're mostly, except for me, not that old. But in World War II, virtually every child in London was put on a train and sent out to the countryside to live with strangers, not necessarily anybody they knew, so they wouldn't get bombed. And the anxiety that they had in being in London when it was being bombed, and then anxiety they had because communication was not all that swift like it is now, it reminded me of the notion of resiliency and how important it is that readiness includes some things that we may want to develop further in the future. And I remember Commissioner Abdo talking about, not only are we making children ready for schools, but we're also talking about making schools ready for children, that they need help too in recognizing, and I know Keisha and groups over at LACO have had this conversation. So there's a broader world not within our control, and I'm reflecting a little on the way I'm feeling on the Board of Supervisors, because it's a broader world not even in our control in so many ways, about, having to help make people ready to survive. But I've just been thinking about that in our strategic plan, where maybe we want to think about resiliency as an aspect of readiness. Not sure, and I don't even know what that would mean, but I always like to throw a little, I don't know, spitball, I guess, into the conversation for next time. So any other commissioners want to talk about our strategic plan or anything they've heard today here?
I don't see any hands
Okay.
up.
All right. Do we have any public comments on this item?
There are no public comments on this item.
Okay, so I think we can close item 8, which was an information item, and we'll return, thank you so much, return to it in July. And I look forward to the next discussion on it. And now the only thing left on the agenda really is public comment on items not on the agenda. Do you see any people attending that wish to speak on items not on the agenda?
There are no public comments on items that are not on the agenda either.
All right. Well, this is fun as usual. Next time we get together, it will be summer and no longer spring. We will have passed the longest day in the year and be on our way back to darkness, as my dad used to say, but it'll take a while. So thank you so much for your participation in the meeting today. Thank you doubly to the staff, who I know worked so hard to prepare presentations for us, and they are deeply appreciated. And speaking for myself, gone over after the meeting so that I can kind of look again at what I was told and think further on them. So thanks to all the commissioners for the time that you're putting into this. Thank you, Keisha, so much for your service, and I look forward to a continuing friendship. Welcome to our new staff members, and thank you all for all the work you're doing for this very vulnerable and important population. And this meeting, if there is no objection, is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.